Welcome to Friday Tech Bites. My name is Karinne Bessette, and I am joined today by Vlad. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vlad Catrinescu. I'm a Microsoft MVP from Montreal, Canada. And Corinne, thank you very much for having me today. It's Friday, best day of the week. So it's going to be fun.
So, the MVP part is very important because we're going to be doing a Friday Tech Bites over this version 6 of Veeam Backup from Microsoft 365 from an MVP perspective. But before we get too deep into this, we want to know where you're from. I am over here in Ohio. We have our audio and campaign staff in the background down in Georgia. And we have you up in Montreal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I love that Canada, I guess, is so small from a population point of view that they just highlighted all of Canada. They're like, Vlad comes for it all.
And I think we have Romania over here.
That is
Excellent.
kind of fun for me because I'm born in Romania as well. But I know we have people from Romania that are in Romania right now, but I feel represented both sides of me at the same time, which is awesome.
So, again, wherever you're watching from, go ahead and post in the chat. We want to know where you're from. We'll go ahead and light up this map. And once we get a lot of responses, we'll go through and call out where you're all listening in from. It's kind of crazy. We have global recognition and some people that are, it's really, really late, and we appreciate you getting on and watching with us. So, back to the topic at hand. Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 version 6 was released at the start of April. And Vlad, you were with us on our first debut presentation, What's New in V6. Uh, what was your favorite feature out of our feature sets?
I mean, my favorite feature, and I think that's something even when you told me the idea a couple months ago about doing that, I was excited. It's the self-service restore. I'm all about empowering the end user to be able to do stuff without needing to go through IT. And of course, finding that balance between how do we empower end users or power users to be productive without giving them too many rights as well, because I mean it could be easy to just give everybody SharePoint admin, right? And they would be able to restore stuff, but imagine what that would make inside an environment. So for me, a solution that would empower users to restore documents they maybe accidentally deleted or they lost, somebody else deleted, without having to open a help desk ticket, wait a few days for IT to go look at it, and then IT be like, oh my God, Vlad deleted something again. Here we go for a boring task for Vlad. And it takes 5 days. And by the time they actually get to restoring my document, I might not even need it anymore. I'll just rewrite that document. So that's the one I was most excited about.
So I feel like you kind of already knew what we were going to talk about because the first slide that we have here is all about that self-service portal and enabling the IT administrator to do restorations or the everyday user by delegating self-service portal access. So there's two ways we're able to initiate this. The first one is, of course, getting it up and running, sign in with your user account, and you can restore your own data based off of your UUID from Microsoft. And it uses the Microsoft back end, so there's no elevated privileges that need to be given out to these end users. The next one I would say is really powerful. It's the delegation rights in order to be able to restore data on behalf of another user without giving them the SharePoint administrator, those elevated roles. Uh, Without giving them access to exfiltrate the data. That is the important part. You're not exfiltrating the data. You don't have the ability to send it to another user or export. You can only send it back to the same data entities, whether it's a SharePoint, a OneDrive, or an Exchange. You're sending it to another folder within that same unit. You can't even get access to the backend data for SharePoint groups if you don't already have access to that SharePoint site.
That's the part that I really love. It respects the permissions. And again, it kind of goes into what I like to do is kind of empower the end user, but still control the sandbox that they are free to play in. So how do we enable them to do stuff that empowers them without giving them too many permissions? And I love what you're saying about really giving them the specific rights they need for a specific task and not more. So it doesn't open up any security risks.
Exactly. And we have a lot of sites out there that we enable groups to be able to collaborate, but us at the IT people, we don't realize, well, they may not all be technical. They may not be able to do the self-service themselves. It's not a concept that they can grasp. And having the ability to delegate to maybe the one person in their organization or on their side of the organization can save tons of time because you don't have to wait 5 days for that help desk ticket. You just have to go tap Jill on the shoulder over there, like, hey, we deleted that file again and we have no idea where it went. I know you don't have access to the site, but could you restore it for me? Okay. So I sympathize with the administrators that have to do restorations and without having access. We don't want to give too much access. You and I think we do a few Microsoft specific talks about separation of privileges and minimum privileges to do the job. Otherwise, you're opening up loopholes into your other parts of the organization. And SharePoint Administrator is a really powerful account because it links to so many things. It links to teams on the back end. It links to the groups that are able to access those different data entities. You can have an HR org, and if you have to give SharePoint administrator to 6 people in order to do those jobs, they have access to HR documentation they really shouldn't.
They can give themselves access to any single document, basically, in your organization. That's the way to put it, whether it's in Teams, whether it's in somebody's OneDrive. Once you're a SharePoint admin, you can, even if you don't have the access by default, you can give yourself access to anything, which is awesome when you have it, but you don't want to have somebody just give them that so they can restore themselves a document in marketing.
So I feel like even further than that is the accidental deletion of an entire site, not archiving a site, mind you, accidentally deleting it where it's non-recoverable. I will admit, navigating some of these administrative portals takes a little bit of time and understanding in order to not break things, I think is the best way to put it. There's which policy do I apply to which plan and which one does it link to? And it doesn't really go to this group because naming conventions start to get sprawled when you've just deployed out there. So I have good news. Our first map is now ready and we'll
Yeah, so
see.
the chat has been lively, and yeah, I see it. Wow.
So we're going to start off here in North America. We are now joined by Colorado, and I think we have another person from Ohio that's called in to join us. Florida and Michigan as well. It's always weird. There's like almost two separate sections that light up when Michigan comes through. The same
Half of it
state.
is Canada. Half of it is Canada.
All right, over here in Europe, we have the Czech Republic, the United Kingdom, Netherlands, and Italy joining us.
I was in Italy 2 weeks ago. It was awesome.
Food's great there. Now we have Argentina down here, India, and Papua New Guinea. Wow, it is super late there. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, we even
So,
have now that we showed the map, a lot more people typed in. I see South Africa, Spain, Thailand in the chat. So awesome. Love virtual events that you're able to really connect with people from really across the globe. And I see somebody else from Montreal just also typed in the chat, which is awesome.
your Canadian brethren are coming to join us. That's
Yeah, see,
excellent.
everybody from Canada right now is in from Montreal here, but yeah, I guess next time we're gonna need to highlight the provinces on the map, not
It's a
only
good
Canada
idea.
as a
We
whole.
we separate the states. Maybe we should consider that. So this is a great way to segment to our next topic, which I'm actually going to bring up a statistic that we pulled from our data protection report. Now, a little background to this data protection report is it's something that we sponsor, but we don't actually give it ourselves. We fund this out to a third party data entity that their entire job is doing surveys out to communities agnostically. Our name was not on this whatsoever when it's been sent out, but we come up with the questions. We had 150 plus questions we send out. They get like a gift card at the end if they've completed the survey. We take this data back, and we've been running the same survey for a few years now and been gathering what are your mandates? What are the types of data loss that you've actually experienced in Microsoft 365? And we found this is one of the most interesting kind of retention mandates in the 3 to 5 year mark is where a majority of the software as a service administrators and the backup admins kind of agreed on something, and they need to keep data for at least this long. And I feel like during COVID, we had an acceleration of using software as a service data entities without building the fundamentals behind the scene for how long should we keep data? How should we protect data? When we're on prem, we think, okay, I'm not going to store the same backups on the same server that my production data is on, because if that catches fire, I have nothing left. But we kind of, I feel like we lost that concept in translation to software as a service. Are you seeing that same thing, Vlad?
I really think that in the past 2 years, the the cloud industry really went through a super fast transformation. And since March 2020, you had so many IT teams that their number one priority was like, how do I enable people to work from home and still get the job done so we don't actually close the company? And that was the number one problem that they had, which is understandable. It forced so many companies to go from, yeah, everybody's in office, we're exploring hybrid work, remote work, to, okay, next week everybody's remote. Make it work, IT. And kind of the retention, the backup took a bit of a back row seat because the focus was like, yeah, it doesn't matter for backup. If we can actually work and we close the company, the backup won't matter. Retention won't matter. But now that we kind of stabilized and hybrid work is in place, each company has their strategy. A lot of IT teams are now going, okay, we rushed into everything for the past year and a half. Let's start looking at everything we did now that we have a bit more time and say, okay, let's take a look at governance. So let's take a look at compliance. Let's run all of those reports and see what we can do better. And this is where I think we're going to have a lot more companies that move to the cloud be like you said, on-prem, we never put the backups on the same rack or on the same server. Now you might have IT teams that question, hey, we back up Microsoft 365 and we put that backup in Azure. Does that respect our compliance or our internal standards that we have? Should we put this on another cloud provider? For how long do we need to keep the data? And I always love, you can see the backup admins, only 1% said forever because they probably know better that forever isn't possible in IT. Hey, I already worked for a company that they told me, Vlad, we need to keep backups and audit logs for 100 years. I was like, why? Are you gonna go to somebody and say, hey, why did your grandfather access this document? No, it's useless. So it's really important that you decide for how long you have to keep data and where to put this data. And because it can get expensive, imagine all the data you have right now if you have to back it up and keep it for 10 years. That cost can add up a lot.
So we actually had a call out from Ahmad, and he agrees with you. So we're getting interaction. This is a great reminder. If you have any questions, any comments, definitely reel them in, ask them. We'll try to get those answered live for you. So we will have another map here ready in just a moment. We're almost there. But before we get that far, we're going to cover our last feature. So this exact pain point about how it's so expensive sending up to object storage, which separation do you want to do, we released backup copy. And we have a little diagram here about able to do from object storage, any object storage agnostically, your own homegrown S3, and being able to send that up to any of the archival storage from Amazon or Azure, whether we're looking at Azure Archive or any of the Amazon S3 Glacier and Glacier Deep Archive. Now, the beauty of these storage entities, they're like at least 12 times the cost savings for archiving your backups out. So at the IT administrator level, you may only need the last, 90 days worth of backups or even a
Most of the
year if you
time,
have
yeah.
to.
Yeah. And remember when I said the self-service is the one that I get most excited about? This one is the people that manage budgets. They're excited about this feature because now they can put all of the data that they have to legally keep for 10 years, they put it, and let's be honest, we have to keep it for compliance reasons. Every once in a while, we might need to go back to that data. So we need to have it. But if you put it, like you said, in archival storage, as as long as you don't read from it or you don't download it, the cost savings are huge compared to hot storage.
Exactly. Plus, the whole thing we've been talking about, where do we store that data to? It might be easier to store it to maybe an Azure object storage to start with, but then you can send it over to AWS depending on whatever your compliance needs are. I've seen some crazy compliance come down, and it's not just from the regulatory governments, it's from ransomware insurance. Have you seen some interesting clauses where they have to be a complete privilege and separation of like credentials in order to have a proper backup from any of the software services yet?
I haven't seen like the actual, like you said, not the regulatory one, but many companies have their own internal requirements. And I'm not sure if you follow a bit of aviation news, but there was a funny story earlier this week when a pilot, I think it was Virgin in the UK, kind of the plane took off, and then they realized that even if that was an actual pilot, he didn't meet the internal requirements for Virgin to fly that flight. So after 1 hour, they actually had to land back, and everybody of course, the news made it a big thing because people are like, "Oh, he's not a pilot, just a random guy." But it was just that that person didn't meet the internal requirements to fly that plane, which is above and beyond what the government requires. And some companies have that. Maybe they want to make sure they never fall a victim of ransomware, or they had that in the past. They don't want it to happen again. And being able to say, okay, we have our data into places, completely different accounts. Whatever happens, if my account gets hacked on Azure AD for whatever reason, because I clicked the link to get money in my email, the backup that I have in AWS or any other compliant storage that you support will never be touched. So we always have a backup to our backup, which is an awesome insurance policy to have.
So you make some great points. In addition to that, just because the regulation is one way today doesn't mean it's not going to change where you need to keep that data, or if you have an incident and you figure out maybe this wasn't the right path. The bill comes in from one of the major cloud providers. Any of those type of scenarios, the flexibility to move between storage types is something that you should really be looking for inside of a backup vendor, because these regulations aren't going to be written today and be that same way forever. They're going to change as we change and morph as a society. Uh, we have another map ready. Let's do it. So we're going to start off here in the States. We got the addition of Connecticut and New York on the map. Moving over to Europe, we have Spain, Romania, Scotland, and Belgium. Colombia, Ecuador, and
South
Brazil.
America is really represented today.
It's the big ones when they light up. It's nice. So we also have South Africa and United Arab Emirates.
Emirates.
Emirates. Thailand, Nepal, Malaysia, and Pakistan is now on the map now. Super exciting. And we have a question. So let's head over to our questions. How does the release of V6 improve capabilities that service providers can offer to their customers? From Tim Myers. If this is the Tim Myers that I think it is, thank you for your question. Uh, so for the service provider conversation, we're offering you the ability to do backup copies with a separate retention policy to an archival storage entity, which means you could have a smaller on-premises footprint for your in-house S3 storage, meaning you're going to have cost savings, be able to have additional customers on your site, and tell them you're sending their data to a separated privileged domain, which is an extra security conversation on the back end. And that's just when it comes to the backup copy. Whenever we're talking about the self-service portal, I would say self-service portal is something our service providers have been asking us for a while to go ahead and make this so that they can publish it out. As long as you're hosting the application, you've given them complete control over their data restorations over their primary data entity boxes, meaning you have a less of a strain on your IT department in order to get the data to your end users and customers.
Just to add a bit on this one, on the self-service restore portal, I always find that when IT invests in something that the end users actually get to use and experience for themselves, it's a big win. Because when you think of it, if you're not in IT and you look, yeah, look at how much money IT is spending on stuff like backup that I, as a user, never use or never have access to. Users don't see this as value, even if in IT we do, of course, but users don't see this as value added. It's fun when you implement a tool that's for the IT department, but users can interact with it. They can see the value from it right away. And this makes users excited about an IT tool, which is fun and very rare. So I always love when you get a double win like this.
I agree. We actually have another question here. It's more about the Veeam backup and replication feature set, and it's asking the taboo question, what are going to be your future supported features? Are they going to be the same from VMware to Hyper-V like we do with the orchestrator? I am just going to say we get this question a lot and we're working on the best way to do it. If you head over to our forums, you should be able to see some of the threads being answered by our development on the features that we're going to be able to do with Hyper-V eventually, or hope to. And put your own comments on what you'd like to see first. To wrap it up here, Vlad and I are going to be spending a lot of time together over the next couple of weeks. We're going to be back together on next Wednesday live at EduCon Seattle. We'll be telling you about that event. But more importantly, the week after that, we're going to be in Veeam On or at Veeam On
In
together,
Vegas. In
Vegas.
Vegas.
Yes. So if you haven't already signed up, we're going to throw up a little splash like why you want to come see us. It's going to be May 16th and 19th. If you can't join us in person, that is completely fine. Still head over to veeamon.com and register for the virtual event. The virtual event is completely free. You have access to like 60 hours of content. We're going to be doing some hybrid streaming from the event where I might be presenting, they're watching me, you're watching us. It's going to be the most collaborative experience, or we're hoping it's going to be the most collaborative virtual hybrid event of the year. So if you can't join us in person, definitely at least register for that virtual session. And I heard there's going to be a puppy cam, and you guys should have access to that
What?
puppy cam. And I hope they're there in person too, because I'm going to spend some time in there decompressing. Vlad, we also have some sessions together live in Vegas as our events team. Like, where's your
We
PowerPoints?
do have two sessions, and as any good MVP, what I tell you is that if you do this your slides the night before, you don't need to practice because they're fresh in your head. So that's how I'm approaching the event. I'll just do them the night before and they'll be fresh. Don't need to read them over and practice. No, extend now what we talked about.
I I did not say this for any of our events people listening. I said we could edit them later if needed. I just need something. We'll be doing some live demos from not just the Microsoft or Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365, but I've roped Vlad into doing some demonstrations from the admin centers as well during our sessions. These will, I believe, be part of the recorded sessions for you to look at later if you, again, registered for those virtuals directly from the MVP. Now, as we wrap up here, we're going to give you a discography of what you're going to expect during the week. So, on our Monday show for our industry insights, we have a guest with Chris Hoff and Melissa Palmer. They'll be doing the 4 stages of ransomware remediation. They're always great talks. Next, Wednesday, again, me and Vlad, you're going to watch us live at Microsoft 365 Education Con. We will
That's gonna
also
be
be
right
joined.
after the keynote, so that will be fun.
Exactly. And we'll also be joined by Edward Watson. And then, of course, next Friday, we have Back with Tech Bites. It's going to be Rick Vanover, joined by David Hill, and kind of breaking down what you should expect at Veeam On. Again, if you haven't registered, come register, come watch live. That'll be at the same time you expected every Friday. We really appreciate everyone joining in from around the world. And we also got Iran and India popping in here at the last moment, right before we check off. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.